right, welcome back to episode 12 of The Beggar's Canyon. Boys, we are here today for a very special episode discussing a monumental moment in Star Wars history, a turning point for the franchise as a whole, if you will. Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire.
Everyone's going crazy over here, guys.
Hey, the studio audience is loving it, and they can't wait to hear what we have to say. This is what most people would consider to be the beginning of the expanded universe, what's referred to as the Star Wars EU. Pretty much everything that's not the movies.
And some connective tissue here between our last episode. I think you told me that for the role-playing game, they basically gave Zahn all of this information, or like, here's the lore and facts of stuff. Like, go make a story now.
Yeah. They told him, okay. Yesterday, I listened to this like 3-hour long behind the scenes thing that was on Audible. That was kind of like a little, writer's commentary. They would play like a little clip from the book, and then he would talk about it. And at the beginning, he talked about kind of the process of getting that job in the first place and stuff. And he was a science fiction writer for Bantam Books, the publishing company. And Lucasfilm wanted to sort of try again to do like adult book publishing. They had put out a trilogy of Han Solo books and a trilogy of Lando books before that were kind of middlingly popular, but it had been a long time since they tried to do that. Star Wars fandom was kind of quiet, and they were going to see, like, can we regenerate interest with this? Timothy Zahn was picked because he was a science fiction writer already working there, specifically picked because he did a lot of military science fiction and was very into, like, the technical jargon of everything.
There is some hard science fiction occasionally that pops up in this book when it comes to like describing like technically how things work, and it's like, oh, I guess we didn't need to know like the inner mechanics of like how the ship works, but it's always nice to have that to paint the corners a little bit.
Yeah, he said he developed he has like a doctorate in physics.
Oh.
So he is super into like the speed of things and the way that ships move in space. And he was talking in the commentary about like a lot of people complain about how X-Wing fighters seem to be able to like bank and rotate in a seeming vacuum of space where stuff doesn't actually work like that.
Man.
Well, that's where they thought of like the S-foil coils that will, sort of react to the vacuum and do this. Anyway, that I brought that up to say, yes, he said in that behind the scenes thing that Lucasfilm gave him all the source books that West End Games had made at that point, which by then they had a few more than what we had looked at. They had gone and done like, a guide to planets, the Imperial technical readouts, other stuff like that. We just looked at like the first book and the rule book, but they had put out maybe like 5 or 6 more source books at that point.
Man, he must have been so delighted. I don't know how it happened, like to get that call though of being like, "Hey, you're gonna write a Star Wars book now."
Yeah.
Just personally, like it'd be such a dream and a gift, and like awesome tapping into the power of like collaborative art, like being given a lot of the bone pieces of the universe, and then having to like structure it and put it together, like for your own story. Like I'm jealous. That's awesome.
It's so cool. I mean, and it's really the first time that we're seeing Star Wars be treated in that way, I guess. I mean, obviously, it's not like it's only George Lucas coming up with ideas for the movies. It's mostly his brainchild, of course, but it's still, well, obviously any movie is a super collaborative effort.
Yeah.
But writing a novel, yes, somewhat of a collaborative effort. You have editors, and with this, you have Lucasfilm and everything telling you what you can and can't do. But a novel is like, very much the author's thing. So, he's kind of the biggest like creative brain so far to be given the reins of like a next chapter of Star Wars. Like,
yeah.
Which I feel like nowadays seems like, well, whatever. There's so many people who have written Star Wars books, TV shows, whatever. But other than, the cartoons and the Ewok movies, like, that hadn't happened at all yet.
Man, I know. And I think I've told you, but like in my hierarchy of Star Wars, I think my favorite thing is Empire Strikes Back. And then my second favorite thing is Heir to the Empire right now, as it stands currently. Just because it was so captivating. It gave me, because, it is a book, like you said, and it's like you can't really BS characterization or character development in a book.
Yeah.
So either you have to do it or your book's gonna suck probably and feel hollow and weird.
Yeah, but especially a fiction like character focused story. The characterization's got to be good, or else it'll just be awful to read.
But he does the book starts like somewhat slowly, I guess. Aside from like the very opening scene, which is I think it's Thrawn and Pelion.
Yeah, it's like a big battle.
Yeah, so so once we get past that though, it's like a bit of slow like Luke Leia diplomacy stuff going on, but like just getting those moments with them, like Luke laying awake in bed thinking of like, man, I really miss Obi-Wan Kenobi. One of the parts that made me laugh was him thinking back on like Yoda positively, and he was like, oh, I remember him on my back, his like wispy hair tickling my ears.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Like, that is something really awesome about the potential of any, book, I guess, but especially like a Star Wars book where like, oh man, I always want to like know a little more about how is Luke feeling about everything that's happened to him. And that's something that Timothy Zahn even was talking about in the commentary, was that the movies are very, so like big deal things are happening all the time, and they have some slow moments here and there where the characters get to like cool down and talk to each other, but like not in the same way that you get that opportunity to really let it breathe in a book. And so he was saying like, yeah, I wanted to highlight like, how does Luke feel about everything that's happened to him, because so much like bad stuff has happened to this guy, and we don't really ever see him like reflect on it that much. So yeah, he's talking about your 3 a.m. thoughts where you're laying awake in bed just kind of rolling through like, oh man, all my friends that have been killed, and like.
But it is also like a nice moment for Luke in the sense that we get to see insight into how like the Jedi philosophy has started to affect his mind too, because even in those moments he's like, I am sad about this stuff, but at the start of the book, that is basically the time when Luke's also like, but I need to stop like thinking about the past like that. I need to stop mourning and grieving, and I need to like push forward now. Yeah.
You're right. And it's really cool because that was another thing I was going to say about his sort of responsibility as a writer here is really setting up a whole new status quo for the whole Star Wars universe. Like, we don't know what happens after Return of the Jedi at all until now.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy. That's a crazy responsibility this man was given.
For real. And it's at least for me, pretty hard to even wrap my head around that, because there's so much shit that I guess the first people who had that responsibility were the Marvel Comics writers, the original like comic that kept going through the 80s. There are stories that happen after Return of the Jedi.
I haven't thought about Amazia, den mother of the infamous Black Hole Gang in a bit, man. She hasn't been name dropped on the podcast in a while.
You're right. I had kind of forgotten about those completely until I was reading some... I was home at my parents' house, and I have this book called like Obsessed with Star Wars, and it's like a quiz book.
Yeah.
And it's like a little digital thing at the bottom where it'll show you like the question number that you turn to, and then you can press A, B, C, or D, and it'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
Yeah.
And
that's sweet.
Yeah, and it's broken up by like the 6 movies, and it asks, like, when I was a kid, this was the hardest fucking thing ever, because almost, like, I would say like 5% of the questions are answerable from just watching the movies.
Oh.
Like, it's almost all, like, expanded universe stuff, like stuff from books, like still about the characters in the movies, but you know, it'll be like talking about like the bounty hunter scene in Empire Strikes Back, and it says like which of these bounty hunters grew up being a part of the like something racing crew or whatever, and it's like okay,
Oh, wow. Okay.
well, unless I just read whatever book that's in, how on earth would I ever know that?
How do you feel about it now, though? Like, can you ace this now for the most part?
I did pretty well, definitely not ace it, but even now, that was like a real example that I pulled. That one, I did not know the answer to that,
Yeah.
but I did have enough to like use context clues, and I got it right, because it was like, which of these guys was part of this like racing crew when they were younger, like Dengar, Bosk, Han Solo, or IG-88 or something like that. And I was like, okay, well, Han Solo, no, I don't think so, because he was on Corellia and blah, blah, blah. Bosk, that doesn't really make sense. Trandoshan culture probably doesn't have time for like a racing team. And IG-88's a droid, so he's probably not it. I'm going to go with Dengar, and it was right.
Yeah.
But,
Man.
you know, I don't actually like know that fact.
I want to be that one day, man.
Yeah.
I can't wait
Isn't
to
that so
do that.
cool sounding? But just a
The
little
way you
look
just
inside
used all
my
your
mind.
Star Wars knowledge
Yeah.
to like order of operations that problem out. I can't wait. I can't wait.
But yeah, but then the second question I looked at was how many eggs do blurgs lay in a normal like hatching pod?
Oh, so
of-
now you have to know like the physiology.
I was like, okay, well, do you remember what blurgs are?
No clue.
They're also not even in the movies, but they were in the Ewok movie. They were the little sort of like 2-foot slug things that the bad guys were riding in the second Ewoks movie.
Jesus, not ringing a bell either.
Yeah. So I was just thinking like, okay, well, like they're not like massive, but they're kind of small. But that doesn't have anything to do with how many eggs you lay.
Yeah.
And I got it wrong, but
Yeah. No.
it's 10 to 12 if you were wondering.
Okay,
10
well,
to 12 eggs.
Now I know.
Yeah.
How do you think scrambled? What's it called? What are they called?
Scrambled blurg eggs.
Yeah. How do you think scrambled blurg eggs taste? Eggs.
Probably good. Okay, so literally I had to pause because I fully forgot why I brought up that book in the first place. But it was because we were talking about the comics and how we hadn't thought about those in a long time.
Right.
And the characters from it. And I just saw some question in that book about Jackson the green rabbit. And I
Let's
was
go.
like, oh, fuck, this
Hey.
guy.
Hey, tying it back though, I do think it is sort of I don't want to rag on the comic people, but it's impressive if you sort of compare. They gave the IP to Marvel to use for a little bit, and they did Jackson and the hedgehog character, and then Zahn got it, and he did some cool diplomatic space stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very subjective thing that people nowadays will argue about a lot, but like, to me, these books feel very Star Wars-y. Like, I believe them in the same universe as the movies.
This
The
book,
comic books, I do not at all.
yeah, for sure. The book also almost feels more Star Wars than parts of the movies to me for some reason, even at times. I don't know. Maybe it's, again, because I've gotten to live in the space of the book a lot longer. Maybe when I start rewatching these movies and I get to live in that space a little longer too, it'll be different. But I
Yeah.
have like consumed, I don't know how long the book was, like 12, 16 hours of this Star Wars Zahn universe, basically.
Yeah.
So I feel like a little bit of familiarity in it, and it does like scream Star Wars to me now.
I agree. I mean, I don't have quite the same experience because you spend longer with the characters in the book than you do in the movie.
Yeah.
But, I've like latently like spent time, quote unquote, with the movie version of the characters for like years and years before reading the book.
Yes.
However, recently, like when I think of Han Solo in my head, like the default voice is the voice of the audiobook narrator in my head now, and not Harrison Ford. And I have to remember, like, that's not how he sounds. That's somebody doing an impression. Mark Thompson, audiobook narrator. He narrates a lot of Star Wars audiobooks, and I think he does a good job. Han Solo and Leia are very silly sounding to me, though.
I want to pull up and find the person that I listened to their audiobook, because it was just a YouTuber who I think it was like a fan project, but they did such a phenomenal job. It was JT Crusader.
Nice.
If anyone wants to go experience that, you can choose. You can listen to the one that Jackson listened to.
The official one, it's got, Star Wars music and sound effects going on in it.
Or you can listen to this fan-made one, which he does a really good job voicing all the characters, and there's no annoying Wookiee noises in it like there is in your version.
That is one of the worst parts about the audiobook was I don't mind when they play a Chewbacca sound effect. That doesn't bother me. But in this first book, when Leia goes to Kashyyyk with Chewbacca and they meet his friend who has a speech impediment, which allows humans to understand him more easily, the voice, Mark Thompson, I'm sure you're a great guy. The voice, I can't even remember what that Wookiee's name was. Whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But like the voice he did for the Wookiee speaking English was one of the like harshest sounds to ever hit my ears. And his no gray voices too, man. Those were just, and I, listen to this while I'm falling asleep, and like it's very relaxing. His regular voice as a narrator is like great, but then, I would be like half asleep and then you hear, "We are pleased to have you here."
Yeah. See, so maybe do listen to the YouTube version instead of that, because I didn't have to deal with that problem. Mine was pretty good.
What did he do for the Wookiee voice?
He didn't do like a weird voice for them. He just like narrated them.
That's funny.
I don't understand. I mean, so funny little loophole in the book, like the speech impediment thing. Like, it's kind of silly if you take a step back and think about it. Like, oh, this speech impediment for Wookiees works in a way that so humans can actually understand that.
Yeah. Like, he even commented on that in the commentary, and he was like, "I thought that was particularly clever."
Oh, rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's like there's certain parts of this book that do feel a little goofy, and it's like, okay, I'll suspend my disbelief for a moment so we can just push forward. But
yeah, it can be pretty silly. I mean, we were talking about at the beginning something he also talked about in the commentary that he has had a lot of people. One of the main complaints he gets about the book, and we both have already talked about this off mic, but Luke drinking hot chocolate. Lando introduced Luke to a very naughty, little guilty treat or guilty pleasure midnight snack drink of hot chocolate.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's like one of the first scenes in the book too, and it's such like I don't know. I was fascinated by like the scene in being in the book, like, but I do like the way that it's set up, where it's like Luke is making his drink. C-3PO is like, "Oh, sir, should you be making a drink that?" And he's like, "Don't worry, like, Lando taught me to make." And he's like, "Oh, no."
Yeah.
And then by the end, like, yeah, the punchline is, yeah, it's chocolate and milk, and you heat it up. And it's like, okay, God, weird little section, but
I know, but it's
funny too.
I like it. Yeah. It did, take me out of the Star Wars world a little bit, but man, it's funny. So I don't mind it.
To me, it seems like someone was like, "Hey, I bet you can't incorporate hot chocolate into the book, Zahn." And he was like, "I can do it in the first chapter."
He says like, a lot of people complained to me that didn't feel very Star Wars-y. However, there's many things in the movies that are words, that why would they be in Star Wars? Like Millennium Falcon. Like, are there falcons in Star Wars? Stuff like that. And So he's like, it's very funny, like what particular phonetics just sort of jump out and take people out of the reality. But then the whole audio commentary, he's like he seems like a very nice, like lovable guy, but he's like major, like dad energy where he's like, and if there isn't chocolate in the Star Wars galaxy, then that's a galaxy that maybe I wouldn't want to be a part of.
Hey, well, he can throw as much hot chocolate in there as he wants, as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, me too.
It was fine. It's just a funny little moment that is like it just stands out because there's really no reason for it to be in there.
Yeah,
it doesn't
real.
like showcase really anything with the characters. I guess it's like C-3PO trying to like calm Luke down, and Luke's having fun messing with him.
Yeah, I think it establishes that Luke and Lando have kind of built more of a friendship because they don't really interact in the movies at all.
Yeah, that's true.
And in this, he says, like, Lando had invited him many times to go visit him at his new thing or whatever. So it's like, oh, they're like buddies now.
All right, should we like break down this book's sort of main plot, I guess?
Yeah, I would say, like, what do we think about the status quo of the Star Wars universe at this point? It's like, I'm going to look it up just to be exact of how many years after.
It's after Return of the Jedi. I think they said it was 5 years after. So this takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Luke and Leia reestablishing, like, diplomatic connections, I guess, trying to, like, get... What is Leia's, like... I know does she have an official title, like, other than just, like, Princess Leia?
But they keep calling her, like, princess, but also, like, general. She was a general, and I think still is, and a senator. So,
yes, yeah. I think that's what I was looking for.
It is also kind of vague, like, what everybody actually does, like, specifically politically, but she's used as, like, the symbolic diplomat, like the face of the politics side of the New Republic, which I guess is the biggest status quo shift, is that, people think about Star Wars in these eras, right? You've got the Old Republic, the Rebels, or the Empire, and the New Republic. And so now this is our first New Republic era content.
Okay. Huh. Interesting.
And they're on Coruscant, which I believe is from the source books, the first time Coruscant is named.
It's called the New Republic capital there, too, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you heard of Coruscant before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just didn't even, before reading this, I didn't know, like, what all was gonna, like, kind of track from this, like, from later stuff, or what would be changed or everything. But yeah, just like Coruscant, big city, planet, capital of the Republic. We got our favorites, Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar hanging around.
Yeah, Winter's there too. She's a new addition.
New character, Winter.
Yeah. Like
also,
a sister type S character to Leia.
Yeah, she's like a Leia's childhood friend from Alderaan.
Yeah,
who was like, so beautiful and royal seeming that oftentimes visitors to the planet would mistake her for the princess.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've also got what is it? Thalia, the Bothan.
Ooh, I don't remember
her. Him.
Ooh.
He's a Bothan, the guy who's trying to frame Admiral Akbar.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Which that's a sort of a complaint I have about the book is like the plot threads sort of exist like parallel to each other and don't necessarily like blend in the best way.
I assume they're going to more in the later books. Or I know you've read ahead. So
Yeah, I finished the whole trilogy, but
I will. So yeah, for full disclosure, I've read the first one. I've started the second one, but Jackson's read them all at this point. But we're just talking about Heir to the Empire.
Yes.
But so yeah, I agree with you in the first book. At least there's basically two different like things going on.
But the end of this one is a big fight.
They just lose. They lose out in getting Luke at the end. Basically, that's their.
Oh
loss.
yes.
That's where they're left off, and then that is one of the moments again where it's like, basically with Thrawn and Captain Pelion. Thrawn is obviously like the strategic lead, and Pelion is just like a talking board that he bounces his thoughts and ideas off of. We've been making jokes about this for a while. These two characters, because they have such a silly dynamic. Really,
their whole thing is like, all right, well we can honestly do it. Like I'll be. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be Thrawn or Pelion?
Does not matter.
All right,
it's easy to fall into the role either way.
Yeah. Okay, you be Thrawn, and I'll do Pelion.
Okay.
Sir, you wanted to see me, sir.
Yes. You're probably wondering why we're retreating, aren't you?
Sir, I would think that we should be pressing our advantage and using our military superiority to suppress the rebels.
Oh, you would think that, but quite the contrary, actually, Pelion. You see, there's more going on than meets the eye.
But, sir!
Yeah, so it's basically... And then he would, like, explain whatever the, like, plot mechanics of what's going on or what he's doing.
Usually because of a piece of art that he looked at.
God, I forgot about that, too.
That is
stolen art, by the way.
Yeah. That is something that I hear as, like, a complaint of this book from people. Something I would kind of agree with. I really like Thrawn's like personality and the stuff that he does when he interacts with other Imperials, but they don't sell me on him actually being that smart, because he almost is never successful. Like, they should have had him actually like really achieve something bad. Like, in the first scene, he beats like some rebels in a space fight, but like we don't know any of those people. Like, have him like actually capture Luke, or like, kill Wedge Antilles or something like that. Like,
yeah, man, you are. Because truthfully, like, Thrawn is one of my new favorite characters in Star Wars.
He's great.
Like, you are right though that like he doesn't, like, there's no real believability behind his intelligence, and he kind of operates almost like an omnipotent being, where he just knows information. Like, especially, we're getting like into the weeds of the end of the book and whatnot, but there's a point where like at the end of the book where Luke is being held hostage by another character called Talon Card. And it sort of just seems like Thrawn intuits everything that's going on there, and he's like, oh, they must have Luke there, like there's others getting involved, blah blah blah, all of that. And he's just like piecing things together in a way that like isn't necessarily super believable, but I'm for the destination of where it takes us, so I'm like very happy with it regardless.
I agree with you. I think, that's the only thing that bums me out about it, is that I do really like Thrawn, and I wish that, and I'm just talking about this one book specifically, not the whole trilogy, but I wish that they had shown him actually outsmarting like Luke, Leia, and Han, like the main characters. He has to be smarter than them at least like one time. And they seem to always be able to get out of it, like whatever plan he had for them. And he's always like, that's actually fine. Yeah. Because we will next time do it better.
Hey, he is always on their tail though. It's, it is what it is. But as like a vehicle to drive the plot forward, I do like him a lot.
Yeah. So I guess his main, I guess his goal is just to, destroy the rebels.
He seems to, like, want, to as many ships as he can get. That's like a thing he keeps talking about. I think he mentions like maybe we'll just kill Luke ourselves at one point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, isn't that why they get the? Oh. Okay, duh. The main sort of Thrawn's main plot goal in this book is that he knows that Leia is pregnant, and he wants to get Drew Sabayoth, the crazy dark Jedi, he's going to give them, or he's promising to give them Luke and Leia so that he can corrupt them and then also corrupt the twins, and then like the Empire can have like their evil Jedi soldiers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Thrawn wants to be, different from the previous Empire where like Palpatine and Vader are kind of the most in charge people of the whole thing. He's like, well, Vader was like a good like weapon, but not a good leader. Mm-hmm. So I want to lead and keep the Force users in line and just use them as a tool.
Smart. Vader was the attack dog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But he had like so much political power as well for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I guess the main bit of stuff from Thrawn, and they go to is it
when they get Sabayoth, that planet? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, what's the mountain? Mount Tantus?
No, I don't remember it.
There's Mount Tantus on a planet.
Oh, by the way, how do you feel about since we're getting there, like how do you feel about Sabayoth and the introduction of another Jedi? Because I know we were talking last time about how it was like, oh, okay, I thought there was no Jedis, and there starts to be Jedis popping up in a bunch of places.
Yeah. I mean, not to spoil anything, but I'm just so used to it at this point that, like, pretty much, like, there's always going to be, like,
new Jedis.
Oh, well, all the Jedi are dead, except for, like, this guy.
Yeah. The Sabayoth is a clone, so yes. A little bit of a difference here. A first clone that I've seen, also.
Yeah.
That's the first little tease of a Clone War thing.
And they do reference the Clone Wars a few times in this book, and they talk about, like, pre-Clone Wars technology or like cloning facilities, spar T-cylinders. The first clone, and I think Timothy Zahn says in the commentary, like, there's that one line about the Clone Wars in the first Star Wars movie, and that was like so intriguing to me. Like, okay, there's clones in this universe. I want to use clones for something.
And his clone, if I'm remembering right, wasn't it that like... I think, okay, because another Thrawn moment where he's like, I've just intuited this kind of, is when he's like, oh, you haven't realized, Pelion? Sabayoth is a clone, not the original. That moment was interesting, too, because then he starts talking about how clones, and, like, in the Clone War, I guess, like, they lose a little bit of themselves through that process, and, like, it makes them a little crazy and scary, which I don't know if that's a thing we'll see in the prequels, if they'll carry over or not when it comes to clones. I don't know if there are clones further in the prequels also.
But I mean, that there's, like, a TV show called The Clone Wars and stuff, so, I mean...
I hope that aspect continue. Like, I hope it's, like, if you keep cloning something, like, you'll be making a bad copy after bad copy after worse copy after worse copy.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And I think, it's something to keep in mind when we're watching newer stuff. It is like, a lot of the stuff like that, he's just kind of guessing on like the backstory because, nobody knew. And also he's kind of instructed to be vague about it.
Yeah.
So like, he does get a lot of stuff like quote unquote wrong that would later be like retconned and whatever. But it's interesting how certain themes reappear and things like that. But anyway, I guess the main things, they're trying to set up a new government and repel the last like lingering bits of the Empire.
Yeah, which seems to be a lot of lingering bits, honestly. 5 years later, and they're still like a pretty major headache for everyone. Like every time they did navigate through space, they were like, oh, well, they can't go through like the Empire sector. Like, oh, geez.
Yeah, but pretty cool how they talk about how like, oh, now we got all these young conscripts that like have no, pomp and circumstance to them or whatever. They don't care about like uh, making sure their uniform is ironed and like saluting and stuff like that. Where Pelion is like sort of the stand-in for like the idealistic imperial admiral who cares about all that kind of like pageantry of it and everything.
Yeah.
Um, so it sort of shifts it to where like the Empire is like at the power level of the rebels in the movies. Not fully, but
Hey, that's why I was rooting for them the whole time. I was like, let's go, Thrawn. Let's go, Pelion.
well, I feel like Thrawn and Pelion are really likable and like
They are.
yeah,
And I've told you, obviously the dynamic that we talked about, where it's just like Thrawn just bouncing his thoughts off of Pelion, just so us as the reader can understand them and know what's going on, is kind of a cheap trick. But if part of me steps away from looking at it as like a device used in the book, and I'm just like, oh, don't they kind of have a sweet relationship where it's like almost like a mentorship where Thrawn is sharing all this information with him. He's sharing all his insights and thoughts with him. He's sharing his like strategic brilliance, which like all the characters talk about throughout the book as they're hyping him up with Pelion. So it is kind of like a nice little relationship they have. I want them to hug.
I agree, and I think you're right because Pelion says or thinks stuff like one day he wished he would just be able to stop questioning Thrawn and accept that he's going to be right and like be able to learn from him and stuff. And then Thrawn, this isn't really a spoiler, and I can't remember if this is in the first book or second or third, but Thrawn says at some point like, well, Pelion, like you're like who I would have as like my successor if something happened to me. So I'm trying to like impart all my wisdom onto you.
Make me cry, dude. Yeah, that's so sweet.
It is. I like their relationship a lot, and I
loved all the Thrawn like chapters. They're really fun.
They're great. And his other big he wants Sabaoth, he wants the Sparti cloning cylinders, he wants more ships, and then the other big thing he wants are the Islamari, which is a big concept that's not from the source books or anything. That's a Timothy Zahn invention.
Wow, crazy thing to just make up yourself. Like a force negator.
Yeah. And he talks about that in the commentary where he says like, and I already knew that this was kind of something people complained about like that's an overpowered thing to introduce into the universe.
Dude, as soon as it came up in the books, I was like, I know this is gone in current status. Yeah. I know it doesn't exist.
It's like the time turner in Harry Potter or whatever. It's just too powerful.
Okay.
But he also talks about, he's like, well, in order to make it feel not so unfair, it has to be they're only found on one planet, barely anybody knows about them, and also they like die if you take them off of their trees. So Thrawn had to invent or Thrawn didn't invent it, but he got like the nutrient frame things to have them be able to survive out of their natural habitat. So it's kind of like, he was like the only person who was smart enough to actually use them.
Yeah. But then Talon Card has them as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it makes it like less of a secret when like the two, I don't want to call Talon an antagonist straight up, but like the two antagonistic characters that we meet are using the same trick.
Yeah.
It's like, is this like a great secret that like people didn't really know about, but the two that they happen to run into are using it?
Yeah. I guess, Talon Card lives on the planet where they are, and Thrawn is like the smartest guy in the world. So they would be like the two guys. But
I guess
I don't disagree with you though. Thrawn kind of explains it as like negating or creating a bubble that pushes back the Force, which is sort of like retroactively explained in a different way in the later books.
Is there like I'm trying to think. Man, I may have saw this on Google because I think I like wanted to see if there was an image of one of these, like of an Islamari, and I don't know if I like read something quickly on Google or if this was in the book itself at some point. But I saw it was like there was an explanation for them. It was like they're the predators that they had on that planet like use the Force, so these like evolved to become Force elusive.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember that, so that might have been a Wikipedia thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that is cool. It could very well be in the book, and I just don't remember. But yeah. Yeah, I guess we've talked about him briefly, but the other two main characters in this are Talon Card and Mara Jade.
Woo!
Yeah.
Woo! Everyone's going crazy for. I like Talon Card a little more. I like Mara Jade a lot. I know you like Mara Jade like a lot though.
She's awesome. I think. Yeah. I do really like her a lot, and it's partially from spoilers, other things that she's in.
Stuff you knew from before this book?
Yeah.
So you knew who she was beforehand?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
because when she popped up, or at least when I got to the point in the first book and I was telling you that like what was going on, you seemed to really like her a lot.
Yeah, she's cool.
And I was like, I like her, but I feel like there's more to it that I don't know yet, you know?
Yeah, I think her whole concept is really cool. You know, a secret agent of the Emperor that, you know, hates Luke Skywalker because, like, he, to her knowledge, he killed the Emperor and ruined her whole life and career and everything.
Yeah. She was there that day at Jabba's palace.
Yeah, disguised as a dancer. Ooh,
pretty cool.
And I bet she blended right in.
Yeah.
I think Mara Jade. I'll go on record and say I got a big crush on Mara Jade. She's sexy as hell.
I haven't seen her, so I've only like heard her described. You know.
I mean, you know, I've seen her in comic book form. And I've seen her in, miniatures form as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And potentially all other forms of media, too. Maybe she's in a million TV shows. Maybe she's not. I won't say.
Hey, well, this probably doesn't happen in any, like, form of TV or film media, but the first book leads me to believe that her and Luke are gonna get it on, you know? Because, you know, Mara's all like, I hate you, Luke, I hate you so much. I want to
kill you.
And she's like, then there was something soft in his eyes there for a moment.
No. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's like pretty obvious that
those two are gonna be KISS.
Yeah. And Luke likes her pretty much right away.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, Luke really turns on the charm with her, too. Because
Yeah.
he gets stuck in a situation where he's captive, so I guess he has to be, like, personable anyway.
Yeah, he's like trying to get her to like him and stuff because of that, but
he does a good job though. I like Luke a little more from this.
Hey, okay. Their scenes together when they're escaping through the forest are really fun. I think their dynamic is pretty great, and they do like this little trick where, you know, they pretend that she's. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about it because I don't remember the details well enough. So they pretend that she's like the prisoner, and he like.
They also like there's like a really poisonous leaf or something in the forest that they make Luke put all over his face so that he can be disguised.
Yeah, so he has like a bad allergic reaction to it.
Which they describe as like a burning pain too. Yeah. It's kind of like a sadistic moment where Mara Jade just gets to like, because she wants to kill Luke. At least she's telling herself she wants to kill Luke at that moment.
Or the Emperor, you must kill Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. But she gets to inflict some pain on him there. That must have been a little cathartic for her. Or maybe that's what the catalyst for her being like, I don't want to.
Why am I doing this? Yeah.
He also then saves her life too, which also is one of those like, ooh, saved my life, and I want to kill him.
But she kind of saves his life too.
Yeah, true. But he also is in danger because like he's a captive of hers.
That's right.
She takes everything away. He saves her as a captive.
Yeah, you're right. Just great additions to the Star Wars world, I think.
Yeah, and Talon Card should also mention.
Yeah,
I like him a ton too. He's the smuggler that like fills the spot of Jabba the Hutt, right? He's like basically the new Jabba.
Yeah, he's like who kind of has seized the power of the criminal underworld.
He's got a very like professional and charismatic reputation.
He's a lot nicer than Jabba.
Yeah.
Like, by a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like hesitant to call him an antagonist earlier, because like he is kind of like,
he's an antagonist, but he's not a villain.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But man, he is such an interesting character. Like the way anyone that he runs into in this, like Rebels or Empire, or I guess should I say like New Republic now in this context?
Hey, I mean, you said you were on the side of the Imperials, and they make a point to someone like accidentally calls them the New Republic, and like everybody gets pissed, and they're like, don't recognize it, call them rebels.
Okay, yeah.
So either way,
yeah. Well, point is, he always like he will, no matter where someone falls like in their alignment, he approaches them like super personably, super like charismatically, but also like stiff and like getting what he wants. Yeah. Very good at like manipulating people to get what he wants. Just a super cool character. One of my favorite moments in this book was when he has Luke captive, and he's got Han and Lando in his facility.
Yeah.
And then like Thrawn also shows up, and it's like this terrible situation for Talon Guard.
That's probably the best part of the book.
It's
right there.
so good. He's like trying to play all sides at once, like, and save his own ass all the while. I think I said it to you, but it reminded me of like maybe a better position in Inglourious Bastards, but like positionally where the Jew hunter was when he had the opportunity to like actually end the war, where he was like, I could not pick up the phone and let your men blow up Adolf Hitler, or I could pick up the phone and end it. Like, it sort of felt like a moment where Talon could decide like pretty big future moments for what happens in the galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, he had the ability to just kill Luke right there, and like him and Mara Jade are thinking about it the whole time.
Yeah,
they're like, would it be more advantageous to kill Luke or give him to Thrawn? Or
Talon's like stopping Mara from just like frothing at the mouth and doing it in the beginning.
Yeah. But he's thinking about giving him to Thrawn as like a bargaining chip.
Yes, it's not really to save Luke. It's more like, well, he's a strategic piece in the puzzle that we're playing.
But you are right. Like, Mara just wants to kill him as fast as possible.
Yeah. God, her attitude is really funny in this whole book too. Just like, and I know my narrator does like such an angry Mara the whole time, which is it's just funny. But like, she's angry, I guess.
Yeah. She's kind of like one note for a while, but
move it, buddy.
Yeah. Oh man, she's cool though, and I mean, I like where her character goes in the next two books too. One of the most interesting concepts in the book too is this is a scene between Pelion, Thrawn, and Sabaoth where essentially they reveal that at the Battle of Endor, the turning point was when the Emperor died. Which, like, yes, in the plot, obviously that would be the turning point. However, like, the Imperial military all started performing worse once the Emperor died. And it's revealed that he was using some kind of Force ability to essentially not totally like hive mind, but like very much influence all the people on his side of the battle to, sharpen their senses or all be on the same page in the battle. And once he died, it kind of descended into chaos. And so that's another reason why Thrawn wants Sabaoth, because he thinks he could do that ability too. And, that's just a really cool Force concept, I think. That, makes total sense as something that like one of the more powerful Force people could do.
Dude, the Force starts to get like scary as it expands. Like that's like possession in a sense, like telepathic possession.
Bro, I mean, I don't know. It's they expand on that in the other books.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
It's cool, I think. Just that concept of like battle meditation is pretty sweet, I think, and I'm pretty sure that was uh, like a power that he saw in the source book, and then kind of expanded on it and mapped it onto like, oh, the Empire or the Emperor was doing that during the Battle of Endor.
It's a cool addition, and it does make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What else freaking happens in this book?
I'm trying to think. Is there? I literally feel like I was talking about this the other day, and now I'm drawing a blank on it. But I feel like there's a really cool moment with Sabayoth where he utilizes that power to some degree, like when they're attacking Lando's facilities or whatever.
Yes, yeah, he is doing it then.
Okay,
and he's like, yeah, in like a scary trance where his eyes are like rolled back in his head and stuff like that. Yeah.
And Luke like latches onto it for a moment too, right? And like they feel each other's presence, and it's and Luke's kind of like, what the heck?
Yeah. I like Lando's whole thing too. It's like a walking city, like
yeah.
I
like him and Han going out to like replace the stuff also afterwards. It's like a little
just like somewhat unnecessary detail.
Yeah. Also, this oh no, maybe I shouldn't. I was gonna say something that's in the second book. Actually, I got it mixed up.
No, that's okay. It's really easy to lump them all together because it feels like Lord of the Rings or something where they really are just like Act 1, 2, and 3 of one big story. And I think, it the tone of them is so similar throughout that it's hard to differentiate between the 3 books. But yeah. I think probably, I mean, we've hinted at it already, but I think maybe the biggest strength of the book is the characterization and the addition of entertaining, likable, believable in the universe, new characters that feel like they can be in scenes with the main characters and it doesn't feel strange at all.
Yeah.
And then also getting the voices of the 3 main characters and, to a lesser extent, like Lando and C-3PO and stuff like that. But like Han especially, I feel like is really well done. And Luke. Leia, I think, gets a little bit shortchanged in the first book. She has more of an active role in the second book, but I think he gets the voices of Luke and Han like really well.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think Lucas is his best with like Han being a close second, but I do wish there's a little bit more Leia in this because what he did write of Leia, I did really like actually too.
Yeah,
it was like nice. Also getting very briefly, moments of her and Han interacting, which I wish there would be more of that in the book, but it does kind of. The plot sort of dictates that they separate.
Yeah, and they even address it of Han as like, man, we've got no alone time together. She's always like off on another mission all the time.
But the moments they do have are nice too, because it's like they're working, and then they're working together as a couple, and then there's just like diplomacy that Leia is very accustomed to, and Han is like a complete outsider too, that he's trying to put on, and then I forget if it happens in the book or it happened before the book, but like he ends up just leaving his position politically anyway.
Yeah, he like resigned his commission or whatever they say. Yeah, that is a cool thing where it really gets into like that thing of like, it's not like Han was only acting as a soldier in the movies or whatever, but it has that feeling of like, oh, what does a fighter do when the fight is over? Like, he's no good at like the government stuff. He feels out of his element and everything. Like, that's a cool dynamic to have with him and Leia.
Yeah, there is even that moment too where he goes and he meets someone. I don't know if it is like a Cantina equivalent type scene, but he goes and he meets like a former, or I guess he's the former smuggler. He goes and meets someone who's still smuggling that he used to know. And I forget what he's trying to get, if it's like trying to get a certain type of ship or he's trying to get a certain type of code breaker, or that was something later on.
He's trying to get mercenary guys to like do shipping for the New Republic because they are low on ships.
Well, it was just like interesting to see him sort of like be on the other side of the table in one of those deals and sort
Yeah,
of like,
yeah.
like I'm actually representing the government and
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
They sent me because they know that like I used to like be like you guys, so I guess I would be good at
Yeah.
talking to you, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And they capture that feeling really well, I think.
Yeah, that's a super fun scene too. And then also the guys like he's like likes Han, but is like skeptical because this is not Han.
Yeah.
It's not giving Han to be with the government.
Yeah. No, you're right though, because he's like, look at you, Mr. Fancy
Yeah.
Straight Edge now. Like, yeah. And he's like, no, I promise I'm still cool. I can hang out with you guys.
But that's, point is the book is like full of little fun character moments like that too, that I just like want to circle a little here because there's probably a ton that we'll miss like talking about this, I don't know, 400-page book. I don't know how long it was.
Pretty big.
But it's worth like reading yourself too. I think it all sounds interesting because there are really fun little character coloring moments in there.
Oh yeah. I don't even think like, there's nothing that really like happens at the end that's like a big spoiler or anything like that. Like it's the kind of book that you could probably like see a summary of the whole story and then still really enjoy reading because pretty much what you just said, but like the plot to me, the story is fun and it moves and the pacing is pretty solid and I like what it's doing. But yeah, like really I'm just here for like the interactions between people and the conversations that are just like, and the new characters. Like,
yeah.
That's really the best part about it.
There's also a lot of fun in like the inventiveness of the scenarios where it's like talking about it isn't like a huge spoiler for the book because it's the moments themselves, but like one of them that stands out is when Luke is kidnapped and has to use the battery power from his prosthetic hand.
Yeah.
In order to like, I forget what he uses to power up. Oh, is it to power up R2-D2?
I don't remember.
It's he needs a device to power up so he
it's
can
like
break
the door lock or something.
Yes, yeah. Which was also like it was just a cool moment. And then later, like I think it's Han and Lando find the hand there, is it? Or no. I forget. They somehow pieced together that like Luke was there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't think he leaves his hand though.
No, but there was something like, they go to wherever he was being held captive and they see something.
Maybe like R2-D2's tracks.
Yeah, it could be. I like that Luke is trying to reconcile his place in the galaxy as like, I'm trying to maybe rebuild the Jedi Order, and he starts thinking about, another huge thing that we have mentioned but not really talked about much is that Leia is pregnant with twins, and Luke is thinking about, oh, well, I'm kind of trying to teach Leia about like how to be a Jedi right now, but it's different because she's the same age as me and blah, blah, blah. But like, man, I guess I'm expected to like be the master of these kids once they're born.
He's going to have to teach for 300 years. No, 800 Yoda?
Yeah.
I mean, was Yoda 800?
He's 900, but he's been teaching Jedi for 800 years.
Yeah. I hope Luke looks as good as Yoda does.
When 900 years you reach. But I like that piece of characterization for Luke, that he's like worried, like, am I going to be a good teacher? Well, Obi-Wan seemed like a great teacher, but he taught Anakin, and Anakin went to the dark side. Like, how am I supposed to deal with that responsibility, knowing that these people I could fail them?
Yeah. That is a really nice part of his character, and like sort of thinking about the Luke legacy a little bit and what he leaves behind.
Because there's a line in there of like, he's not the last of the old Jedi, he's the first of the new.
Don't they say that in the movies too, even? Or maybe I'm just remembering from the book.
I
feel like Obi-Wan's ghost thing says this.
Yeah, I don't think that's in the movie.
You would know.
I'm questioning myself now, though. I don't know. I get very excited at the idea of like, ooh, Luke starting a new Jedi Order. That's cool.
That does sound exciting. I wonder if the second Thrawn trilogy is connected to the first one, or if it's like it's still in that one universe.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I do know where in the timeline it is and what has been retconned and stuff from this material, but I don't know exactly what those books are about.
I have a feeling those. Well, I have a feeling the babies will see a light of day in the trilogy. I assume they get birthed maybe in the last book. I don't know. But
I don't know.
I assume they probably don't exist much further past that. But
I don't know.
interesting. Okay. Interesting.
I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't.
Just try not to get attached to them personally,
Mm-hmm. Well, there's, I won't say.
There's a Disney Plus show called Force Babies, actually, isn't there?
Yeah, there's Force Babies. That's coming out later this month. There is actually a kids cartoon right now called like Young Jedi Academy or something that is like a baby's show.
Well, it sounds fun.
It's like, like Yoda teaching a bunch of little kids how to use the Force.
Are they like kidified versions of characters already pre-established?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, that would be more fun.
Okay, yeah. So it's new Jedis?
Yeah,
new Jedi kids?
like baby Jedi kids.
Wow.
Okay. It's, obviously not in any kind of continuity. It's like a cartoon for 3-year-olds. Like, it's not.
What's this called?
I can't even remember. Young Jedi Adventures, Young Jedi
check this out.
Academy. I don't know.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And I say like it's not in continuity. I actually have no idea. It might be.
Yeah. Hey, Heir to the Empire is not in continuity, right?
Well, not anymore. No.
Parts of it are Is it like they just picked what they wanted to keep?
Not really.
Okay.
Sort of. Yeah. Yeah. Sort of. I don't want to say too much, but I guess the thing I would keep in mind about any of these books that we read or talk about in the next several years, like they make an attempt to all be connected to each other and all be able to exist simultaneously in the same world, and even sometimes build upon other books and things and use characters from other people's writing and create this connected world. However, many people and people at Lucasfilm and different things, I don't know if those were ever considered like officially canon or whatever. Because I don't even think that was like a thing that
no lore master yet.
Yeah. So, and there's this fabled chart that has things. I forget what the exact scale is or what this chart is even called, but it has stuff like a canon. The movies are a canon. Like this is absolutely capital T truth of Star Wars universe. Then like, and I'm just making this up. I don't know exactly what the examples are, but then like the Clone Wars TV show, that's B canon. Like, yes, this is canon, but maybe there's a few things here and there that if we have to contradict them later, it's not a big deal. Then like the Thrawn book is C canon, and then so on and so on. And then like Tebow, Tale of Magic and Suspense is like F canon. Like, sure, it counts, but it's not essential. Or,
hey, if anything, that should be the most canon.
That's S canon.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Don't have to worry about really stepping on toes there.
Mm-hmm. So there exists this chart at Lucasfilm. They've never revealed that to the public.
Huh. I wonder if it's... How old is this, like, rumor of it?
Oh, for a long time, and it's continually updated, and it does exist for sure. I mean, they've shown I
just wonder if it's still even in chart format, or if it's, like, just blown up to something completely
different.
Like,
it's a whole, like, website, I think. It's like a secret website.
Yeah.
Or database.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, there was some expo convention where they showed like a screenshot from it one time and everybody went crazy for it, and like that's like the one image of it that keeps getting reposted everywhere of like, see, it's real.
Oh, that's cool.
The canon chart is real. I forget what it's called.
The screenshot they posted, did it like, why'd they show it? Did it show anything insightful into the universe, or like?
I don't remember. I can't remember.
That's exactly. Fun though. I'll look it up later.
But anyway, I guess all that to say that like, for now, you could consider this book to be as canon or not as you wanted. Like, and I think that's kind of the case with all the books, even though they do try to build upon each other and all exist in the same reality, which is noble.
It's canon to me.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I prefer it to not everything. We'll drop that for now. But I do quite like this as a something of a pseudo episode 7, 8, 9. Like it I could easily see it working well as that.
I would love to see like I guess. Because of the pacing of it, it'd be a little more difficult, but like some film or television adaptation of this story.
Yeah. It would be cool. I've read the comic book adaptation of it, and I don't think they got the pacing. I think it was kind of what we were talking about the adaptation of Empire Strikes Back, where it's just like going through the plot beats, but there's no like downtime to chill with people. So like I don't care about any characters or whatever.
Well, yeah, this feels like it really wouldn't work as a comic book, frankly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that character moment stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it would work as a show either or like a movie. Maybe not. Maybe it's only for this format, but it's great in this format.
Yeah, I agree. Any other Heir to the Empire thoughts? It just really can't be like, I guess, understated how important this was for Star Wars.
Dude, imagine getting all that Ewok content and then boom, Heir to the Empire. And I mean, it's now been like a month and a half or so since I finished Heir to the Empire. But us going through content in the way that we have been, it was kind of a breath of fresh air for me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we had done a ton of Ewok stuff and like a ton of miscellaneous Star Wars stuff. So like getting back with like Luke, Leia, Han, C-3PO, R2-D2 is there trilling along the way, even like all that stuff was really fun and nice.
Beeping and warbling.
Yeah.
I don't know. I very much agree. And I mean, this is back, like the main characters, a main chapter in the main characters, tapestry of the larger universe. Yeah, we've got other stuff like the Ewok stuff, but that doesn't matter. This is the first thing that feels like, this is like the main events of Star Wars or whatever.
Yeah, and they actually do things that affect the greater universe at large. Whereas
absolutely.
Like Wicket isn't going to do something that affects the greater universe.
Took down the Emperor's finest legion.
Well,
not single-handedly, but
with some help.
Yeah. It fully reignited interest into Star Wars, and I think is truly, it's not like it's the only book, but I would assume that it's a big part of why the prequels ever got made.
Wow, interesting.
And why the special editions got made, and why, it was a #1 New York Times bestseller, like #1. So it was really popular.
Well, we did know the prequels were going to be made before this book was even announced, though, right?
Well,
you just mean like the actual push to do it, perhaps?
Yes. Gotcha. I mean, he had said that was going to happen, but the fate of that was pretty unclear at this point. And like, we had episodes 4, 5, and 6, and he said there's going to be prequels. But obviously, announcing a movie and fully producing and releasing one is a different ordeal.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Man, it's cool that it was a New York Times bestseller, too.
Yeah.
A Star Wars book.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about it like they had no idea whether or not it would be successful, because like Star Wars fandom was pretty quiet at that time. And they were like, we are pretty sure the audience is there, but like, we don't know. Maybe nobody cares.
Man.
But they did.
Imagine being like a Star Wars hardcore RPG fan at this time, though. And then you're like, oh my god, they're actually going to make like a book out of some of the materials that they've been playing around with forever. That was exciting.
For sure. You would feel like you had a little like insider knowledge to what might happen.
The Islamari, I guess the Islamari are the one thing Zahn created.
But something cool from the books from the RPG that he used in the book at the end is the space troopers. Those were pretty cool.
Okay, I don't remember that too much.
They were just like robotic stormtroopers that had like anti-gravity boots that could connect to like the outside of ships and stuff.
I remember this now. I think I thought it was a person in a suit, like a special suit instead of the...
It might be. I actually can't remember if it's a droid or if it's a person in a suit.
Okay. I don't know. I
can't remember. Yeah. But they had, like, they were able to walk outside spaceships and stuff. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
I do remember that, yeah.
And Han is like, space troopers. Oh, no.
Really, not a great Han. Sorry, it's not a great Han voice, but you're doing a perfect impression of the Han voice that the narrator does. Yeah. So I wouldn't ever insult your Han impression.
Nah, I mean I can't. I can do a better impression of the audiobook person doing it than an actual
Han Solo. That's sort of what my guy sounds like, but I can't even do it. Right?
Yeah, I'm Han Solo. So what?
That's the Millennium Falcon.
Got a problem with it?
A couple more hours of that.
Yeah. Well, any other Heir to the Empire thoughts?
This is what my talent card sounded like.
Yeah. Mara J.
Yeah.
My Vornskers, Sturm and Drang. Do you like my Vornskers?
Really good, yeah. So I don't know where his accent comes from, but I don't know what it was trying to even emulate, but interesting.
He's like Zorro.
I know. I was like
the Count of Monte Cristo,
or like something. Latino, Italian. Like, what is going on?
I think he might be like Spanish.
Okay,
or like a European like swashbuckler guy. I don't know.
He's cool.
Yeah, he is cool. Also, I mean, we've seen many images of him now. Thrawn's design and the way he's described is really sick too. I mean, he's pretty humanoid, but he's blue and he's got like big red glowing eyes.
Yeah,
pretty
just
cool.
Like a nefarious member of the Blue Man Group is like what I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he looks like, except with a black crew cut instead of being bald. And then also the idea of like a white Imperial uniform, that's cool too.
Mm-hmm.
Just great. A lot of great ideas.
Super fun, like flexing of some Star Wars imagination in here.
Absolutely. Good job, Mr. Zahn. We will talk about the next two books, but probably not in as much detail because, like we said, they kind of are very similar in terms of writing style, and there wouldn't be really any more like behind the scenes stuff to go into that would be any different about the next two. But we will like go over the plots of them and kind of the big advancements to big story beats that happen in them and stuff, because there are some important things in the second two books that will affect future books and other things like that.
Yeah, I will be curious to see where it ends too. How if Zahn is a put my toys back in the box type, or what he does.
Mm-hmm. All right, so speaking of West End games, we also played two more of the West End games board games. As far as I can remember, these are the last board games from them that we'll play.
A bummer. They were cool.
I know, they were cool. We played Escape from the Death Star and the Lightsaber Dueling Pack, which I'm pretty sure Lightsaber Dueling Pack is 88 and Escape from the Death Star is 90. So these are like, while the source books are coming out, a little bit before Heir to the Empire came out. But yeah, we played the Escape the Death Star one virtually. I did get the actual books of the Lightsaber Dueling Pack because it was pretty cheap on eBay. They're pretty cool. What you want to talk about the Death Star one first?
Yeah, sure. So we played it through the virtual tabletop simulation, but it was a pretty fun game. I liked it a lot. I think I liked this one a little bit more than what was the last one we played called?
The Assault on Hoth one.
Yeah, Assault on the Hoth. But maybe if we got into a better flow of that one, it could be more fun too. We're like essentially just embody two of the characters. I think your options are Chewbacca, Han, Leia, and Luke, right?
Yeah, and it's like a 1 to 4 player game because technically you could control all 4 characters and play it by yourself.
Just as a 2-player, we split.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. So it's just getting everyone off the Death Star, pulling these cards, fun strategy. to it as well, to a degree, and like a collaborative game that you're working together to get off the Death Star. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah. I like that part of it of like, it feels like, oh, everybody's kind of going to get split up at certain points and come back together. And like, the Death Star is like a maze of crazy encounters that could happen.
Yeah, we're getting like stormtroopers added to our characters, which like puts like penalties on us if we like don't get rid of them or if we get too many of them. So there's like opportunities if you're on the same tile to like trade off stormtroopers, which that's pretty cool. It does feel like we're like actually helping each other like move forward.
Yeah, some very like RPG elements to it too. The characters had like a stat sheet with stamina, constitution, ability, and you're doing like skill checks the whole time. But it streamlined that in a very simplified way where it felt like very board gamey as opposed to Dungeons and Dragons-y or whatever, even though it did have those elements to it.
Yeah, this one, like after a few turns, immediately clicked with me much easier, even though like I didn't necessarily know what was going to be on some of the cards moving forward or like how it was going to use some of the stats. Once like you get into the flow of it, which happens pretty quickly, I felt like the game was like super intuitive. And it was like good enough where on our first try, it was like, oh, I feel like we can start doing some legitimate strategy now. Already, which is good.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of different sectors on the board and each one you go to, you have to like pull a card from whatever, color space you're on, and different ones are going to be more dangerous than other ones. Some spaces are usually good, but have like one really bad thing in the deck. Yeah. And then some, like there's like military sectors that are going to have a lot of stormtroopers, bad things happen to you and stuff like that.
And if you want to know if we escaped, by the way, we didn't.
No, because there is also a mechanic where once per game, each character can call upon Obi-Wan to do something for them. And you really need to save him as much as you can because there's something that can happen where you encounter Darth Vader, and if your character actually has to fight Darth Vader, they automatically die. And if one person dies, the whole game is over.
Yeah, so someone of the two here lost it for us.
Okay, well, you can use Obi-Wan you can call him in if you have to fight Vader, and he'll step in and let you run away. You can also call on him to restore your force points. Mm-hmm. And the force points can be used to like essentially add one value to your skill check, and you can spend force points to like go, oh, so there was this thing where Chewbacca, I was controlling Chewbacca. He had to do a skill check.
Of course it was Chewbacca, too. I didn't even connect that, of course. We lost because Chewbacca.
Yeah. Well, I know. But Chewbacca pulled a card that essentially was going to make him go all the way back toward the beginning of the board on the game. And I failed the skill check, and I was going to have to, warp to the very beginning of the board. And we had already been playing for like 2 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does suck because it did take us 2 hours to get to the end of the board.
Yeah. And
so I get it.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to use Obi-Wan to refill my force points and pass this skill check. And then, of course, Chewbacca was the one person that had to fight Vader, and he died.
Man, we were literally turns away from winning.
Yeah, I think Leia and Luke were already on the Millennium Falcon, and it was just Han and Chewie left.
Should have left Chewie. I wish that was canon in the movies, too. They left Chewie behind.
God damn it, dude. I knew you would say something like that, but that's so disrespectful.
If you want to reinforce positive feelings towards Chewbacca, maybe don't have him be the reason we lose and can't escape the Death Star, okay?
Oh, boy. Well, yeah. I guess you're right.
But really fun game.
It is cool, yeah. Yeah.
And not broken at all. At least as far as I can tell.
Yeah, as far as we could tell, it's not broken. Good segue into the other game, the Lightsaber Dueling pack. This is less of a board game, really. It's
kind of a talk to each other game.
Yeah. It's essentially you have these two booklets, and it's like Luke versus Vader in a lightsaber dueling thing. And I could even see it being how you would approach if you had a lightsaber fight in an RPG campaign you were doing. maybe you could use this.
I was literally thinking if I was playing Dungeons and Dragons and we wanted to go into combat and I wanted to do like a more realism Dungeons and Dragons that like sort of was devoid of some of the more magical aspects and wanted to focus on sword fighting exclusively, a book like this would actually be a really fun way to like get that mechanic across.
Yeah, for sure. Because you essentially have a list of moves that you can choose from, and you and the person you're playing against choose simultaneously without telling each other, and then you reveal like what move you're going to do. So, I do high swing and Ryan does high block. Well, okay, now we look in our books like, okay, if I do high swing and he does block, go to this page, and then you see the result, and like sometimes you score points if you scored a hit, but if he had blocked appropriately or guessed the counter to whatever move I was doing, then we'd block it and kind of go back to the beginning again.
And as far as we can tell, it works with as strong logic as it can. I think like one of the cooler moments of like testing out to see if it would do what I think would happen naturally was, I think there was a point where I got the lightsaber out of your hands, like I used weapon dislodge.
Yeah.
And then basically like there's a few options then Jackson was able to do in that instance, but he's limited. I can sort of see what his options are and try and guess what he's going to do. Obviously, in that case, I was like, okay, I think he's going to immediately go for like the pick your weapon back up because it limits what you can do without it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I wonder if I do the kick move, if it'll be like him kicking you as you're trying to pick it up. Was sort of what I was imagining. And it basically had that effect when we did it.
It stopped me from getting it.
Yeah.
I was like knocked to the ground
which was like really cool. I was like, okay, there's like this makes me feel like we're having a real sword fight versus like a silly little game, I
agree. It had cool moments like that where you could like flip and then it would be like, oh, Darth Vader's behind me and I'm turned around. So the only things I can do are like the attack that's like spin back around and strike, which has less chance of actually connecting and it's kind of like a Hail Mary type of thing.
Or there was like that moment whenever you and I would get into because there's like close combat and there's extended range. Whenever we were back into like what is basically neutral extended range, there was a couple times we just charged at each other both times, and it's like I don't know, it just has such a fun, like we both take damage from that and it makes sense. It's like such a funny effect. And then I remember one of the times I was like, okay, what if I like hurl objects like the Vader trash slinging while like the charging is happening, and it's like, oh, that has a completely different effect where I'm like, I didn't get damaged because I wasn't involved in like the collision of it.
Yeah.
So just like, I don't know, this game has so much potential. I wish there were more games like this, and it's kind of sad there was like the one game breaking issue we ran into.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up though. So we very quickly found, as far as we can tell, unless like we're just missing something in the rules, but I really don't think so. I mean, I read it like twice.
Yeah.
An ability that both characters have. Luke has like reveal good side power where he's trying to like use the Force to turn Vader good, and Vader has like reveal dark side to try and turn Luke bad. And if you are in extended range and you get hit with that attack, not only does it do 6 damage out of a total of 30 that you have at the beginning, which is, a big hit.
Yeah.
It also says, tell your opponent to only do brown moves next turn, which the only brown moves are like jump, duck, retrieve weapon, and like something else.
Yeah.
Essentially just dodging. But none of the dodging moves work against reveal dark side or whatever, because it's like the Force, so you can't like jump out of the way of it, I guess. But if you get caught in that loop where you can only use brown moves and your opponent knows that, they can just use that move. There's nothing stopping you from doing it over and over again until you win.
It's a death loop, basically. Yeah. It truly reminds me of like digital card games when like someone has some loop going on where it's like, okay, now I just have to sit back and watch my 100 HP drain for 5 minutes while like this does its loop. It's like you already lost, but now you have to go
watch
through
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, and it's like, okay, well, if you make one mistake and get caught in that loop, if you don't counter that move, which you can, if you lightsaber attack while they do that, then you stop them from doing it and you hit them with the lightsaber. But if you happen to dodge, then you will get caught in the loop and only use brown moves. You can't use lightsaber attack anymore.
I feel like if I weapon dislodge and then do it also, though, you automatically get stuck in that loop too.
No, I know,
so it just truly broke.
Yeah, it is. It is. So after we played a couple times, we were like, okay, we're just gonna not use that move. And when you don't use that move, it's pretty fun.
This is one of my favorite Star Wars games we've played so far.
Yeah,
honestly.
And the books are awesome because each page has like a big drawing of, if you're playing as Luke, you get the Darth Vader book and vice versa, because it's sort of like a first-person perspective. Like,
so cool.
The image is like your lightsaber coming up out of the bottom of the frame and then whatever Vader's doing, like on his move. And it, like 9 times out of 10, made sense, like visually in my brain of like, if I'm imagining this fight, like that's what would be happening right now. Like,
yeah, that's why I'm saying it was like pretty impressive they're able to do that. And there were only truly like a couple of moments when we were like, wait, how did I end up turned around if this happened? If we both did this.
Yeah.
But like,
it happened a couple of times.
Yeah.
But yeah. Essentially, it was like a 2-player choose your own adventure.
I was almost going to describe it as that earlier, like a communal choose your own adventure. It is that straight up, basically, just like without a narrative to it.
Yeah. Because it's essentially like, if your opponent said this, turn to this page, and then they do the same thing, and so then you have the 2 results of what's happening to each of you, and it's really cool.
Pretty fun though, trying to like strategically anticipate and make your own moves too, and like, you know, you would think, my instinct when I first play is like, ooh, I want to use all these attacks immediately, but you will get punished for that pretty early on. So you have to dodge strategically too, and think about, am I dodging? Am I doing like a dodge jump? Am I stepping away? Like, there's differences.
Because like the side swings you can dodge back for. I mean, it's like a video game dodge mechanic works like this as well, where like a side thing you have to dodge backwards from, and then like a jabbing thing you have to dodge to the side from.
Yeah.
It's cool. Like you said, like both Luke and Vader have attacks that are more powerful, but are like slower, like big 2-handed attacks. So if Vader goes for a 2-handed downswing attack while Luke is going for a quick side attack, then he'll hit Vader before that attack connects.
Yeah.
So then he'll do a little bit of damage. But if I, tried to just regularly block that attack, it's too strong for me to block with the lightsaber. It'll go straight through it and like hit me that way.
This is another instance I think I remembered where it was fun to like play around with the idea of theater of the mind and like what you're seeing actually happen. Because I also remember, the first game we played, I think I also dislodged your weapon there, and then I did that Vader smash attack, which we were like, oh my god, this did 10 damage.
Yeah.
And then, because I don't think the move you had made that time immediately was to go for the weapon, right? I think you did something else first.
I think I tried to like heal force points or something, and you down smashed me while I was trying to do that.
Yes, so the move hit there, and then I knew you still had to get your weapon.
Yeah,
so I knew you were going to have to bet, like, I presume, your guy bends over to pick up his weapon, so I did the smash again, and it did another 10.
Yeah, it hit again.
But, so just, like, it's fun, because you learn things from the games, too, because then it's like, okay, I need to think next time, if I get into a situation where my weapon is dislodged, I need to think strategically when I'm going to pick it up, because it may not be the best to do it right away. Which also screwed me later, because you had disarmed me at one point, and we were in close combat, but then we got reset back to extended range.
Yeah.
And I hadn't picked up my weapon yet, so I was like, oh, okay, very obvious what I'm going to do now.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we already said it, but that's just like the coolest part about it is how easily you can like logically imagine the move to move.
It's a cool game
thing of the fight. Like,
it's a very cool game.
It may be not the most mechanically sound, but it is really nice.
Pretty quick though too.
It takes like 15 minutes to play.
We played like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah. I like it a lot. I would definitely just on any day, like pick it up and play one or two, because it takes
Today?
like 15 minutes. Hey, so yeah, that's what we did today. Any other thoughts on anything we talked about today?
What do you mean that's what we did today? We didn't do any of this today.
That's what we talked about today.
Yeah. I didn't read Heir to the Empire today. I didn't play the lightsaber game today. I didn't play Escape from the Death Star today.
You're right.
Don't lie to people.
Okay, well, that's what we discussed today.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
No. Mm-mm.
Good stuff. All
What's
three of
next?
these things I like. Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say?
I just said what's next.
What's next? What's next is pretty exciting. We've got 2 video games. Next episode 13, we will discuss 2 video games, 2 NES video games.
Ooh.
These are
2?
The games Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. Just sort of straight up video game adaptations of the first 2 movies. And yeah, spoiler alert, they're pretty bad, but these will probably be the last of the I don't want to say throwaway, because there's still value to talk about them, but I think they're the last of just like the crappy Star Wars games.
Okay.
We'll be getting into the good stuff after this.
Good. I'm excited to play as some real Star Wars action.
Yes. So there's these 2. And then we will also be talking about what George Lucas and Lucasfilm is doing during all this time, this pretty big hiatus between Return of the Jedi and the prequels. George Lucas was still a busy guy during this time, though. What was he up to if he wasn't writing the Star Wars movies?
Scrooge McDuck, baths of money? I don't know.
He pretty much. Well, Howard the Duck, bags of money. Little spoiler as to what he was working on. So yeah, we'll talk about that. And then the thing I'm most excited about, this is not only the launch of the novels expanded universe, but also the relaunch of the comic books. This is when Dark Horse gets the license to Star Wars in 1991. They publish Dark Empire, a miniseries, a 6-issue miniseries. This is the first of many Dark Horse comics that will start to come out. But these in particular, I think are really cool. I like them a lot.
It'll be cool to talk comics again. That'll be fun.
I know.
Especially a little more modern comics.
Yeah, and they're at least in my opinion, they're just straight up better than the stuff that we've talked about before.
Well, they're going to be different too in the sense that I'm assuming they have more of like a sequential story to them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is like a 6-issue miniseries.
Yeah. So this is kind of legitimately the first real Star Wars story comic that we're getting.
Yes.
That'll be cool.
That, is considered to be shared with the Thrawn books in, continuity-wise.
Okay.
It takes place later than the Thrawn books.
I thought you were going to say also on like the level that people view it at.
No, I don't know. I don't really know.
Huge for a comic.
There's controversial stuff in this comic amongst fans. I think it's really cool, though. And it's also a little trilogy of miniseries as well.
Sweet.
So that'll be episode 13. As always, thank you for listening. And you know what? Tell your friends about the Beggars Canyon Boys. If you're a Star Wars fan and you know someone else who is just voracious to hear about the timeline of Star Wars, and maybe they've already consumed all this media and they want to hear people talk about it, or maybe they want to know about it but they don't want to actually take the time to read and watch all this stuff. Very understandable. They just want to hear a little bit about it. That's what we're trying to do here. So
or alternatively, if you are someone who's like consumed a lot of Star Wars lore, you're listening to this, you have a friend who hasn't, and you want to walk them through what we've done so far, you could ride along, baby.
Yeah,
you could do an episode. You could show them the first, and then you guys could go communally
like a little
listen.
book club.
To the first episode.
I love that idea.
And then maybe your friend is smarter and more insightful than me, and you're like, my friend gets it way more than this idiot does, and then you guys stop listening, I guess.
I doubt that would happen.
True.
Who could be smarter and more insightful than than our co-host Ryan over here.
Oh, don't butter me up. You won't like me when I'm buttered up.
Oh.
Famous movie quote.
Yeah, from Hulk.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never tell me the odds.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
End it.
All right, goodbye.